Hello, hello. Good morning. It is early morning for Angie and I, today's guest. We're literally in the same time zone, which is awesome and rare. But bless her heart for joining me at this time local for her as well. Welcome, Angie. So, my gorgeous, beautiful, everyday women listeners, here we go again. Welcome to the Startup Stories podcast, where the ambitious, everyday woman is heard, held, and served in life and business. Relatable stories to keep you sane, grounded, and growing as you expand yourself and deliver your purpose to the world. Love that. So, Angie Clay is our guest today, you guys. She is an expressive arts coach. And I love this. She describes herself on her website, therapist by day, expressive arts coach by night, which is just so sweet. But this is going to be great because Angie has a day job and a business, and they're complementary, but she's weaving the pieces of her life together in service to you and in leverage to her lived experience to uplift you and to hold you through life's transitions using art, which can be, correct me if I'm wrong, Angie, but like a very revealing modality to explore one's emotions and like in a safer way where it's maybe not as confronting, right, as speaking them out, because sometimes we're scared of the words. So welcome to the show and let's like dive into this and you.
You so much for having me. Yes, it's really early, but yeah, I like these types of times in the moment, in the mornings
Yeah,
where the world is still kind of
yeah,
coming out of their sleep. So,
yeah. I find there's like this s- uh, magnetic energy, right, in the pre-launch of the day. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, great. So, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us a bit like a day in the life, or kind of cast the context of who Angie Clay is. P.S. I met her through a mutual online friend, and I just fell in love right away. She has very magnetic energy, and so great. So I'm just thrilled that we're able to have this interview today.
yeah, who am I? Like that's like who are we ever, right? I always say we're always reinventing ourselves until we no longer, until we expire, right? I think
Um,
sometimes the world will say, oh, you gotta, you know, you got to find out who you are, a job, get all these things by a certain time. But I feel like you get stuck in that kind of thinking because we're always reinventing. I'm hoping when I'm 80, I'm still like changing and doing all the things.
yeah.
But who am I? So I call myself, I'm very deeply rooted. I feel like that comes from my Southern upbringing. I grew up in Virginia, the Charlottesville, Virginia area. And then I went to school. I feel like I went into my womanhood in the DC area, which
Mhm.
I just love because it was just so full of culture and people from all over the world. All my friends were everyone was different. I was able to taste different foods and it just expanded who um, I am as an individual now. I still say I still have that kind of DC, DMV swag in my style and how I carry myself. And now I'm over here in inland Northwest. Once you come into Washington State, you quickly understand the difference between inland Northwest and Pacific Northwest. And
Yeah.
so, eastern side of the state. I've been a journaler ever since, since 1991. And I think before that, because I was always writing in things. I go back and look at my mom's books. I had scribbled in books and yeah, I just give me a pen and a paper. I love to write.
Mhm.
It's just very therapeutic for me just to feel the pen and the paper.
Yeah.
Very bougie about that. Love to have a ultra Sharpie pen and 32-pound paper.
Okay.
So yeah, so I call myself a writer. It took me a very long time to say that. So I
Mhm.
remember when I went to college, I wanted to be a writer, and the professor told me I couldn't write.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
stopped.
I think they
That's
tell all writers that. Right.
the best paper. Somewhere along the line, someone told them they weren't good.
Right.
I think it was the player, hater from the Himalayas that was saying as they desired the thing that you were doing.
Yeah.
So I stopped writing. But the only thing that saved me during that time was journaling.
Mm.
And so I just kept writing in my journal. And then, of course, it's going to, you enter into womanhood. You have all these different types of relationships that change you and love. And then when you have heartbreak, you become so
Mhm.
poetic and, you
Mhm.
know, you
Yeah.
dive deeper into who you are. And so, yeah, and I just through life got involved with sexual assault advocacy. And I think that's kind of opened me up to like the whole arts world of just using that as a modality.
Mhm.
I volunteered for a University of Virginia student who was going, getting a degree in art therapy. And so she needed clients. So I was like, oh, I want to do it. And it was the best thing ever. We did some sculptures. We went out and we drummed. I have a djembe to this day. We just did different types of things. And then growing up in an area like Charlottesville, Virginia, you have that kind of like hippie-ish lifestyle. And was introduced to weaving and all those types of things. And so I just feel like I like mixed media.
Mhm.
So I feel like my life is a collage. So
Yeah.
maybe that's why I like that. Just intuitively, I like to just rip and glue things together.
Mhm.
And so I'm just pieces of like my life story, all kind of like on this big, huge like piece of canvas.
Yeah, 100%. And it's not completed until expiration, like you said. That is a stunning and exquisite description of our tapestry, of our masterpiece of life, right? So if we think about it this way, ladies, if we think about creating our life as a piece of art, and Angie spoke of a lot of different methods that you can use, but there's no cookie cutter or, surgically precise approach to it. That is living art. That is, continuous expression from within in whatever you're feeling called to do in the moment. And that to me sounds like freedom and sounds like spacious, like open, right? So how now do you support yourself and or women in reaching into this? Like, say for me, I might feel, "Ugh, I can't do that. How am I gonna do that?" Right? But what do you see starts to awaken when we allow ourselves? I think it almost comes back to a childlike willingness to just get messy.
I think just starting off in micro steps. I have a freebie like I usually put in like an email, and it's just basically micro things you can do up throughout the day to self-care, right? And I'm like,
Mhm.
it's really good. Micro, like
Yeah.
tiny little steps. Just having coloring sheets, right? Just coloring. We loved coloring back in the day when we were young. It puts your mind into a zone. You start thinking that your hand is going, right? So starting with coloring. And then from that, just writing, I'm getting a small notebook and just writing just a few sentences there, starting with little things that you're grateful for. And then from the gratitude, you say, okay, well, why am I grateful for having a car? Well, I have a car, I take the bus and I get on the bus and I don't like being on the bus because then you start thinking about a memory that you had and then you start writing about that. It's just tiny little seeds, like the mustard seed, how it's so small and it grows into such a giant tree. It's those tiny things that will help lead us into the bigger things.
Right. That's beautiful. So, art, the writing is art, and I just want to point out um, that while you were told no, you still stayed true to you and stayed connected with it through your journaling until it circled back now. And you guys, even if you go to Angie's website, like her podcast episode descriptions are poetic, and her language is light and relatable but profound. And so um that you listened to somebody else's opinion, but you didn't completely let go of what you knew was true for you. And I want to point that out because it struck me as a moment, and it's like almost a defining moment in time in your life. And it happens to all of us, where someone says something and then we drink it or we buy it, right? But even though we know it's not entirely true. And where have we maybe turned something off or hidden it back away because somebody else's opinion like Angie said, haters gonna hate type of thing, to um, deter. It's like a challenge. I see that professor saying that to you as a challenge of your conviction in what felt right for you.
Yeah. I wanted to be a writer. I've always wanted to be. I had the little typewriter, and I don't know if you remember the young authors contest they would have every year at school, you know, that was
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
And so I just was like, I'm gonna go to school and just be an English major.
yeah.
Then I lived in the country, so I was from a small town, uh, rural America in Virginia. So I go to school in like the Northern Virginia, DC area. So it's all different, you know, kids driving like Lamborghinis, Mercedes Benzes to school, you know.
Wow.
And so in this honors program, I get there, and then he says that, and that killed me. I dropped out of that whole honors program. I like changed my way. I was like, I stopped. Like I literally stopped. It
Mhm,
wasn't until years later that I realized that the journaling was what saved me. And it wasn't really till 2020 when I
mhm,
had to put my soap and candle business online. And so I had to really create those descriptions. And so I just was
mhm.
pretty creative with it. And people started saying, hey, you really can write. And I'm like, what? You know, and so I had to like get out of that
Yeah,
on Creative Live back in 2015. And so I get on the stage and they started talking about, I kept saying this is why I stall on my website because of the writing. It was like getting really emotional because I'm like, oh my goodness, I think this is trauma. You know, here's
yeah,
this.
yeah. It had been locked up, right? And set aside in like shame and uncertainty, right?
Yeah. Just even you saying like giving me compliments right now about like my writing and stuff. And I'm like, really? Really? Like I still be like, oh, like that was like
Well,
emotional.
I'm a New York publisher, so like really, it means a lot.
Validating. I'm like, oh my god. Even I
Yeah,
felt myself kind of get like choked up with you just
yeah,
giving me those positive kudos, you know. And I still kind of carry it, but I feel more
yeah,
confident now.
yeah,
And that man, in my 50th year of living,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. So, and how old were you when that professor said that,
huh, I was 18.
right?
I was just going to school.
Yeah, yeah.
18.
But it's so coming through that transition and still being in it, you're boldly expressing through writing, even if it's uncomfortable. And so, how do you hold space in yourself to stay encouraged and willing to be uncomfortable with that?
Mhm. Yes, I thank you. Yeah, that's why I feel like the transition is really important for people in life because it's those periods of having to repivot or pivot again. Like that's where we find ourselves. Sometimes we have to just, you know, become people that we didn't think we would become.
Yeah.
You know, but I'll be the caregiver for my mom in 2021. She had a major surgery and it went haywire. She had to like learn to walk again. I had to literally sleep 3 months really by bedside. This is like when COVID was spiking. I literally was kind of like hiding in like Harborview, like not leaving her bedside. It was just so critical. And like sneaking out of the hospital when I could like know the cool dudes is working the door so I could get back in because they had the policy once you leave, you can't get back in. And you know, it was just and so then it like really changed my life, like how I see like just aging and all of that and for people who are doing with caregiving. I just never thought about caregiving in that aspect. I was like living my life.
Hmm.
Have a whole nother level of respect for people who are doing it, people who are doing it with children that they know they'll take care of them until they pass away or the child pass away, you know?
Hmm.
So that just made me think about people who will have to, you know, transition and they have to do it sometimes alone and not having someone to like be able to help them out or if you're a single only child and you're taking care of maybe one parent or both parents.
Hmm.
And so it just made me start thinking about how many times we have these different transitions in life and do we have a squad that helps us? Do
Yeah.
we have those modalities where we need to like stop and self-care for ourselves? Are we those ambitious type of people who just keep going and going and going? So many times I talk to people who have like fibromyalgia. And I would kind of gulp a little bit when they were like, "Oh, I found my allergy." I used to be the type of person I would just go and go and go and go, and I'm like, "Oh, I don't want that." And then now I think I have. They were saying that I might have some type of autoimmune disease that they can't figure out, and I'm like, "Is us ambitious types that we just keep going and going and going and going, and we just don't take time to stop and like just smell the roses, as they say."
And you're
And so
like,
that's why this work I feel like is super important. Like, let me be your cheerleader. Let me be the bugaboo friend that's like, ding ding, are you still hearing? Hello, hello. Are
yeah,
you taking time? Are you taking a break? Hello, hello, hello.
yeah,
I want to be in your world like that so you remember to do those things and take care of yourself.
yeah, that um, hyper survival mode is like a rushing forward and potentially an avoidance of the stillness and what might be heard in that stillness. Then you're just constantly running away from yourself. And your body is like a piece of machinery, right? And it will wear out. And if you keep your nervous system in a hyperactive state, then it can lead to damage. And that is a pattern that I've seen in, and this isn't from a place of judgment whatsoever. It's from a place of love and service and desire to live, like Angie said, rooted and grounded in and satiated in that space while still, achieving things that feel good and are fulfilling. And so the pattern that I've seen is like ambitious, driven women burning out, getting sick, being able to run, but then breaking, right? And that's where I think I fell into the words of sustainable momentum because we have a long life to live, hopefully. And like Angie said, you sometimes find yourself being, you said it so beautifully, you end up being somebody you never expected you would be, right? And so we can kind of steward our way through life a little bit and then be better prepared to receive these life surprises, these higher realm plans for us, whatever faith, spirituality might be. And so, in prepare, like looking back from where you are now and looking at the people that come to you for support, what are some patterns and some ways that you help people kind of start to crack and kind of relax in so that because what I'm getting at is if we can start to learn to support ourselves through transitions, particularly when we're older, when I would say it's harder because we're more set in our ways and in our sense of identity, then how does life start to change and become more creative and fun and opportunistic, if you will, rather than like resistance.
I feel like we are excavators of our lives and our self-care. Our journals and things like that are just our field notes. And I feel like in order to go forward and to find ourselves and what we really want, I think it really starts like when we're in kindergarten, we're like in elementary school, and then going back on the timeline and going back to like significant events that happened in your life that you remember that were happy times and like things that kind of changed who you were as you were developing and growing. And those timelines there, you will have it has a song, a theme that you'll see. And sometimes we put things down because life happens, right? You may get married and then like, okay, well, husband, we're gonna travel the world together, and like, oops, we're pregnant. Oh no, we're gonna get a house, and like now, you
Yeah.
may want to be this artist, and then now you're getting to that age where the kids are leaving the nest, and you're like, oh, well, who am I? Let's go back to the young woman you were when you put down those goals that you had, and let's explore what that was. And now is the time. I would say I call my mom a teenager now.
Mm,
She's like, "What's for dinner?" I'm like, "What's for dinner?"
mhm.
What's for dinner? And I'm like, oh my goodness, I feel like that's when I was a kid. I'm like, so parents, remember, you're,
Wow.
taking care of you. So, and so those types of things, like we just going back and finding out those things that we love. Like
Mhm,
for me, it was writing. I remember like I wanted to be a teacher. And so somehow in my life, I'm always teaching in some
mhm.
aspect.
Yeah.
I don't like the way the classroom's set up today because it doesn't give kids really a chance to really explore and be who they are. A part of me too is just having teachers who are able to teach class based on their passion.
Mhm,
Right. And so, but I can do that in this manner, like
mhm.
coaching
Yeah.
and teaching that way, facilitating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then as a therapist through the day too, right? A beautiful way to help people excavate themselves. And
Yeah.
so we hear a lot, you go back to who you were as a child. And I'm 43, my daughter's 6, my stepdaughter's 15. The 15-year-old was 6 when I met her. And I look at her and I'm like, "Ah, where has that gone?" Right? It feels like an alternate reality or not entirely a fading dream, but time gets puts space in between. And I mean, I never grew up, so I think I'm still connected to my inner child uh, and crazy self. But watching a child as an adult has been very anchoring and like beautifully confronting because I find I'm either trying to get her to come like to my age, and obviously this isn't logical, or she's trying to get me to come to her age, right? And in that experience, I'm realizing like how life can just kind of grow you up and away from who you really are. I think a lot of coaches have that remembering language because there's got to be some truth to it if it's a practice and an exercise to anchor back to. You were formed in the womb as like molecularly as who you were going to be. And then life comes and fills you and influences you with other things. And so I really like hearing that again and diving a little bit deeper into, this inner child thing, because sometimes it can feel a bit cliche, right? So,
Mhm.
what do you see then when you take people there, when you even connect? I mean, your writing is gorgeous. Your words are gorgeous. It's really from your soul. It's not like it
I really appreciate
express it in print, but it really comes just out of you anyway.
I really appreciate that. I feel like if you ever had a dream you wanted to be like a fashion designer or something and you went on with life and it may show up like in your style or whatever. And like just going back and revisiting that and how did it feel for you? How can we put those pieces, those elements into your life now?
Hmm.
Exploration, like the excavation. When you find something, you're walking around, and you're like, oh, this is $20 bill on the ground, right? You're so excited about that. Or you
Hmm.
go, I would say shop your own closet, right? You go into your closet and you're digging through, like, oh my goodness, this shirt still has a tag on it, right? You're just rediscovering what's already in your closet that may
Yeah.
be tucked away, way in the back. And I feel like that's something that having someone to sit there and hold your hand and walk you through it gently,
Hmm.
and then also when you're challenged to try something, really try it. And sometimes we're like, oh, I don't know if I could do that, right? But
Hmm.
go ahead and like give it a chance and try it. And so that's my main thing is like the timeline, walking through with someone and being a soft space for them to land, place for them to land.
Yeah.
So basically, you're a cheerleader. I'm like your hype girl,
Hey,
and
girl,
you
but
just
like this
act
the
like
safety too, right? The safety, because it's gonna feel uncomfortable. And I'm realizing, and Angie, it's kind of crazy that you said you as a child maybe you wanted to be a fashion designer and it comes out in your style. I'm like, oh my God, that's me. Because I would draw, little dolls, if you will, and then decorate them in clothing all by pencil. And then I do have a bit of a crazy style. And so sharing this because I find that super interesting that that example completely relates. But as a tangible adult example of a micro shift and a micro step, like you were talking about, of reconnecting. And that it's not like we need to be six again and, necessarily play with toys, but there are ways of having our childlike self show up in our adult self at an age appropriate, if you want, ageism, means of just being your authentic self, your more self, right?
Right. Yeah, tapping into it. Like I was using the example of fashion designer too, because that's what I wanted to do when I was growing up.
Mm.
Like, okay, so now what would you do? Why not get some girlfriends? New York Fashion Week. Get
Mhm.
yourself a hotel. Just go and be all
Mhm.
of the fashion goodness. Start getting fashion magazines and flipping through it and like
Right.
start putting together like your clothes creatively, like, you know, have a friend be like, hey, let's do have fun. Let's go have a makeover,
Mhm.
There's those little tiny things that you can do to like awaken that part of you that's just been sleeping for a little bit. How can you add that to your everyday style if you're not doing it?
Yeah.
Sometimes, if you're running after kids and you're busy, you may just have like your I always call it the Steve Jobs or the Mark Zuck outfit. Most of the billionaires they wear the same thing because they say they don't have time to put together like outfits. They don't waste time doing that.
Uh,
In my mind, I'm like, oh, that's so drabby. And like
yes.
my body is the canvas, and when I put clothes on, there's like dashes of paint, a little glue collage. Let's put on the jacket. Like it's
Yeah.
so fun. And so if you've come and that's from out that space where maybe you were kind of like in your outfit, like to run the kids around and do all the things. And now you're like, okay, well, what is my style now? So let's
Mhm.
go back and revisit that. Let's play around with like pieces, like making a fashion collage, right? Getting
Mhm.
those magazines and cutting them up and see what you come up with. Because it's there, that color palette's going to be there. The line of who you are and your style is going to run through those pieces. Um,
And how you feel, full body reaction here, guys. How you feel when you dress to who you are, you carry yourself differently. It elevates your your sense of self-love. It's a way of honoring you. And like you said, you decorate from spirit and then you go about your day and you just feel different. And this is like a micro self-care measure to take. And it's not vanity. It is it is expression. This is arts in motion and in a very practical adult, way. But I guarantee, guys, if you like one of my great, because I'm a ponytail, I'm sporty spice, like leggings, but I've been wearing maxi skirts and I cut a slit because then the movement of my legs is just so much more comfortable. So I'm going back to my fashion designer self, like chopping up clothes, right? And I just feel more feminine and I feel more flowy, and it's such a different vibe than just being in leggings and a t-shirt at home, just cooking supper, just, chasing after the kids. But it shifts, and then that is the space where the survival mode, the constantly reacting, the nervous system starts to catch a break and starts to breathe and starts to feel safe and starts, to like relax and enjoy. It's such a simple thing. I was going to say the other go-to is like jeans and a cute shirt and a little blazer. And for me, super comfy, but frag, it looks sharp. Like it's crazy. And then I walk around and I'm like, pop the collar. What's up, girl? Like just feeling super boss. Right?
especially with, now is the conversation about the clothing pollution. Love
Mm-hmm.
stores. Today I got dressed. I'm like, okay, this shirt I got at the thrift store for like, I don't know, $2,
Yeah.
$3. Jacket, $2 from the thrift store. I always pride myself in trying to have outfits that are like under $50 or 100.
Yeah.
And so I like to do that. It's just fun. Um, and so yeah, so just be really expressive and don't put on a cute outfit. I had these overalls I purchased, and we had this at work. We had a uh, tribute to France. I was like, let's eat food from France, right? Let's just have like a
Yeah,
pot
great.
style from France. I could not sit in my seat that day. I was walking around. I was so proud of my little overalls. They had the big, huge, wide bottom pants. Walking through everybody's area, like, hey, hey. I was like, I'm sorry, I'm feeling myself in my outfit today. I look, I'm like, I got to get out and move around, And it's just
Yeah,
that's it, right? Just a
yeah.
little outfit, then combined with other things that you have in your life. Our life is layered.
Our life is there.
It's just a layered cake, just different tiers and who we are. It just makes us all makes us a whole. And so
Mhm.
that's
Well,
what art.
let's talk about a few of your layers. So, like, you've got this beautiful coaching practice through expressive arts. You've got a day job. You're still looking after your mom. How do you? I want to make it real and normalize that we're not always experts of our own craft, and that is beautiful. Now, how do you support yourself, and how do you navigate holding, these three plus significant responsibilities, um, and yet intentionally show up for each of them?
Mhm. Well, sometimes it's like a dirty tango where like I have 3 or 4 dance partners and I'm getting to the group with one and the other one comes violently on the dance floor and be like, you come over
Right.
here. And I'm like, dun, dun, dun. Like, oh, you again. Okay.
Okay.
So sometimes it's like that. I lay in the bed and I'm like, okay, which I'll have to divorce one of you. And one of the things we're in talks of a divorce is my Liberate and Lather side of my business, which is I have a store downtown.
Yeah.
It stays closed most of the time. So for the weekends when I go in to make, and I have a website, but I feel like I'm growing in a different direction now, more so the coaching and the therapy work. And the therapy work that I do daily. I work with kiddos ages 5 to 20. That's
Mhm.
not really my cup of tea.
Mhm.
I don't have kids. I'm kind of old school and like how I see things and child
Mhm.
rearing and things. So a lot of times the core of who I am, I have to more so hold back. And so I just don't enjoy so much dealing with kiddos, but definitely give them that due respect because as a young child, you are very impressionable.
Yeah.
And being a person that been through different things. I mean, when I wrote a book one time in 6th grade, I do not know where I got the concept, but I wrote about a girl that was in college and she became homeless.
Wow.
And she had her key to her mailbox, and her parents would send her a little bit of money, and that's what she would go in and get. I'm like, where did you pick that up from?
Wow.
Like, just world and
Yeah.
societal issues. I've always been like, I don't know if it comes from living down south. My mom went to segregated schools. I didn't realize what the train track meant for a long time until I literally went home and I saw, as cities grow, right? They have
Mhm.
all these fancy houses, and I got it. The train track separated the black neighborhoods from the white. I mean, as a kid, we would go over that, and I always felt like that train track was annoying because we all rump in the
Yep.
car trying to go over. It
That.
went from me to like, oh, that's annoying, and I never really got that. And so I don't know if it was from that and what experiences I was watching as a kid because I'm very visual. I'm a people watcher, and just my own thing of being teased sometimes because I was tall or being the black girl in class, but I was just very tapped into that. And so those types of things really like layered who I am as a person
Mhm.
and things deeply as a kid. And so in my day job, I have that. And so I'm working to get my license so I can have my own practice. But yeah, I have all these different things that are I have to spin around. And I'll be frank and I won't lie. Like if you want to pick up those things, like there are going to be days when you're like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
So you have to have that checks and balances. Like, okay, which one is bringing me the most joy? And right now, we're in the talks of possibly having a divorce and splitting up. My business that I have downtown, I'm like, are you going to work? Because like, look, you got to do something, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, y'all going to work, and then you snatching my coins because I got to take care of you. And so
Yeah.
I don't want to come home and see you laying on the sofa looking at TV. Right? That's kind of how I feel about the business right now. I'm like, you got to get up and get a job.
Oh, that's so cute.
Right? And it's like, what do you mean, what do you without you? You know, and I'm like, this sounds like a relationship that I would run if you really was that dude.
Yeah,
Right? So like, okay, so what are we gonna do?
yeah,
And so that's how I feel about that, right? But I get overwhelmed with the separation because it's like I gotta break it down, I gotta sell all the stuff, and I gotta like clean out the store. And I'm like, oh, so I have it percolating in the background. So I feel
mhm,
like you always have to have that checks and balances and remembering like what really is bringing you joy. And then once you start finding what that is, start slowly moving towards it. And that's kind of like what I'm doing, right? And here I am, and yet again, another transition.
yeah,
And so I'm going to walk through it.
yeah, yeah. There's no other way, right? There's no shortcuts, there's no detours. And if you do, you're just going to end up like either longer or more painful or dirtier or whatever. You
Mhm.
got to get through it to get to the destination. So my metaphor or analogy for this is on the weekend, the family went on a hike, the four of us and the dog. We live on the West Coast, and you go through the forest and then down to the ocean. And the trail was so muddy, like just swamp. We were finding ways around and weaving through, but we got mud on us, right? And then the dog, I mean, if I could be a dog, he's just like right through the middle. And then boop, he's on the other side. Done. And he looks at us, hey guys, what's up? Just covered, but not a care in the world for it because of the joy and like the willingness to embrace it and go rushing through it, right? Instead of carefully, trepidatiously looking, seeking, getting a wider, 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 wider berth whooshed, through.
Mhm. But you got to
And
do the other side, right?
yeah,
Yeah. So sometimes we just want to like, just rip the band-aid off and go for it, right? And that's fine if you want to do that. And sometimes to make sure that we're sure, we know we're sure, we're really sure about it,
that's
we
it.
gotta like take our little baby steps and we have to get
That's it.
around to it. But guess what? We get to the other side.
Yeah,
Right? And we do that. And then maybe that's just our style. Maybe we're just type of people that we don't. Because if we rush through the mud, then we're like, okay, did I do the right steps? That was kind of fast. Then we're like sitting here beating ourselves up on the other side.
hmm,
Right? When you maybe take the longer way to get there, you'd be like, "Woo, I'm glad that's over. I have no regrets."
yeah,
But if you go through it real fast and you're like, "Oh, I'm glad I'm muddy, but shoot, I'm gonna get in the shower. I'm gonna clean, so I'm fine." So yeah, and I think too, at the end of the day, that equals what? Ding 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 ding. Drum roll. Our outlook.
yeah, yeah. And that is a beautiful, non-judgmental, just willingly or in discomfort, just take the steps. Just take the steps rather than entirely avoid it, because the alternative to that is obstacle, turn around, spin on your heels, and head back and head back. And then you never get the reward. And the reward was the beach. And it was epic. And it was awesome being down there. And if we had been deterred, just you don't get that reward. You don't know what it's going to be. And again, okay, sure, in generality, there might be a reward the other way too, but this is a metaphor and we're using it in the context of encouraging people forward.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Want to get over there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I like mostly probably working with adults because you really do have the options. For kiddos, they only
Right.
have so much because they
Yeah.
have people they have to answer to.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, oh, oh, you're
Mhm.
doing the best you can because it's
Mhm.
not your fault why you're here at
Mhm.
this point. And so as adults, really seeing that, like we really should be taking those. We have the freedom to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Kids don't,
Yeah.
right? They really don't. Even though they know they're in a sticky situation, they need to get out. They can't,
Mhm.
and they don't have enough for the other systems partners to step in to get them out. Like they have to like wade through it.
Yeah.
It'll take them longer to get to the other side.
Yeah.
And so, because we can quickly make changes, or we have the ability to do, let's not squander it.
That right there. That right there. Being a good steward with what is available to you, 100%. Because not everybody has that privilege or freedom or access. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else that you want to share, Angie, an insight? What do you think future you is saying to present you?
Girl, keep it moving.
Yeah.
Don't stop. Like we're building the momentum, and I like Amber McHugh. She's a coach. She always says, we're right on time. Like we're never
Mhm,
late. Like we're right on time. So
mhm,
where I am, how I'm shining up in life right now, I'm just right on time.
mhm.
You know, it's just like my story. It's just a collage. It's just a collage.
Yeah.
Collages will never be done. You
Okay.
can always go back and slap some glue and paint over what you already done. And
Mhm.
there's layers. As you peel it away before you get to the canvas, there's layers and layers and layers and layers. And that's just my life.
Mhm.
That's been real full and full of things. And um, you know. And I don't know, I'm looking at the Megan What's Love, Megan, the Meghan Markle show that's on
Okay.
Netflix. And because there's so many mixed feelings about that
Okay.
show. And a part of me was like, okay, well, yeah, if you're like, you don't have to do, maybe you can like show up in this way. So I thought, well, hey, let's not be judgmental because it has to be hard to like not be able to just get in your car. I can get in my car and boogie on down the road. I don't have people down this making a comment on every move I make or snapping pictures, and I gotta have all these people to follow me.
Yeah.
It's like I appreciate that because now you're just showing up where you are in life and you're turning to nature and having beehives and making your own preserves and cooking
Mhm.
for your family, and you're showing up in such ways that is really cool. And I was like, well, what pieces can I take from this for myself to keep
Mhm.
moving and like how to entertain, And I'm like, you know what? I do want to entertain. So I'm thinking about how I can add those things in my life.
Mhm.
So we always go through different things. We all have our different ways we perceive life, um and we just show up and shine to be the best that we can, and we just share what we have out of our cisterns to other people. So
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That's beautiful. So we're going to share where to find and follow you. We're going to share your freebie in the show notes. If you don't want to hang out with Angie, then I don't know. I don't know what to say. Not everybody's pizza, but I do.
you would
Yeah.
get those little pills and like you would put it in the water and it'll grow. Like it'll
Yeah.
be like a
Yeah. The grow your dinosaur or whatever.
one of those. That's why I feel like having people like yourself. I'm like, you know what? You're like my little water and growth, self-esteem,
Yeah.
like just jumping up and you'll like, oh, you're great. You do this. That.
Yeah. Number one fan
Thank you
club
so
over
much.
here.
I appreciate you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so beautiful diving into who someone is and what they're choosing to do with their life, right? And I really appreciate that we got to dig into that today, and that we've connected because I see lots of different things coming in the future. So thank you so much for sharing your heart, your wisdom, your poetry. It's just been so awesome, and I can't wait to share out this episode.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.